What was essential for us, and I think this is one of the core elements why I think we're doing quite well regarding cluster, is that it was very clear what are clusters there for. I see quite a few organizations, especially in Germany and also Eastern Europe, where they set up cluster structures, but they don't have really clear focus what is the overall objective of those clusters. They should try to do a little bit of everything. A little bit of export promotion, a little bit of attracting foreign direct investment, a little bit of innovation-related work, a little bit of getting universities with companies together, a little bit of improving skills of the people whatsoever. For us, it was quite clear, and I think I'm very grateful that in our case, it was clear from the very beginning that the overall objective of our clusters to increase the competitiveness of the companies. Full stop. It's not about location marketing. It's not about all the other things I said before. It's about to increase the competitiveness of the cluster partners. And when this is the overall goal, it is also very clear what is the role of the universities in our clusters. And I got from the discussion before a little bit that there was also the issue, what is the role of universities in clusters and cluster organizations? They are very important. I will show you a little bit later on how we deal with them. They are very important. But the cluster is not there to promote and sell university research to companies. That's not the role of a cluster manager. The role of the cluster manager is to increase the competitiveness. What we as cluster management do, and I'm a strong believer of, that innovation nowadays just can come through collaboration and through working together with other ones. With universities, of course. With companies along your supply chain. Sometimes even with competitors. Very good with complementary companies, and I will have a few examples about that. But you need to work together in order to come up with innovation. And what we as a cluster management try to do is to stimulate this kind of collaboration in order to innovate for the sake of increasing competitiveness. And this chart or this kind of logic was there at day one in 1998 in the automotive cluster, and it is still there. This was never subject to change. And this, I think, is very important, was very important for us. And I think that collaboration and working together for the sake of innovation is getting even more and more important nowadays. When we talk about clusters in our region, we always talk about the value chain. We are not talking about a horizontal, everything is the same kind of cluster structure. So I got also from the discussion of the cluster managers before that I think it was about, is it an open cluster or not? Can everyone join, or is it a restricted structure? For us, it's a very easy, clear answer. It is an open structure and it needs to be open. It is clusters in our understanding are not a tool for exclusivity and are not a tool to get rid of competition. In fact, competition, it's good for you. Competition might be difficult at the beginning because the competing company is putting pressure on your prices and is reducing the prices, is destroying the markets. I mean, we hear that all the time. This company, that bad guy is destroying the market. But actually, when you have fierce competition, I mean, the only thing you can do is you need to differentiate. You need to innovate, that you are not competing on just price anymore. And that's the source of innovation. And if you do that, not just yourself, but together with other ones, it's even better and it's much more easier to really differentiate. And that's why for us, our cluster structure, it's always the value chain. This is the automotive cluster. And Our automotive cluster consists of more than 200 companies, and the funny thing is that this is a different picture of it. Of those 200 companies, are just not even half of them are actually suppliers of parts to the automotive industry. So we have out of those 218, just 101 companies are tier 1, 2, or 3 suppliers. The rest of them are flanking companies in terms of logistics, engineering, IT services, also research institutions. Of course, we need the universities. We need the research and training centers that are there. But the cluster is there for the companies, and we are always, as the cluster management, on the company side and try to reach out, building bridges to the universities, not the other way around. You see our clusters, and the IT cluster has also grown to 100 companies. Right now, this is our youngest cluster, not just 2 years old. They are quite large in terms of participating companies, which means we just start cluster initiatives when we have the potential of at least 100 companies. We think and we say we'll need to have a certain amount of companies in order to really get into this kind of innovation activities. The average size of these companies, it's mostly small and medium-sized companies. 84% of them are small and medium-sized. What is essential, and this I think is very similar from your structures to our structures, is the cluster boards. We do have also these boards, and in every individual cluster, a board of, and I took also this note, a board of the leading companies in terms of activities. It's not the big companies and the big guys are on the board, it's the active companies that are on the board. And as far as I understood it from the discussion before, that you have also revolving structures in the board. That's what we have. Every, let's say, 3 to 5 years, the board revolves, and this revolves like this, that the old members suggest new members, but it needs to be new companies and new persons. What we do not want to have in our structures is those kind of inherited mandates. We have these 5 fields of activities, and I would like to spend a little bit of time into going a little bit into detail, because I think this can be of value. The first thing is, of course, information and communication. We have it all, like probably do have. You have those brochures, like quarterly journals, which we distribute. We provide information about the specific companies, about activities from the cluster, and we also spread this to potential and existing customers of our cluster members. Because this is also a marketing instrument for our cluster members. We have, of course, detailed databases, home pages. We have newsletters that can be used by the cluster members. So, for example, if a company is looking for experience in a specific field, he wants, for example, to buy a certain kind of machinery, and he wants to get to know who has experience with that specific machinery. He can use our newsletter in order to communicate to the other members, because I mean our clusters are quite large, in order to get to know, has anyone experienced with that specific machinery? And then they get together and then they can exchange the information. The most important field, and the whole idea about this, is getting the companies to know each other better. Our cluster managers and their teams are doing round about 150 company interviews, visits per year. So it is our aim to visit each cluster member once a year at their premise. When we go to the company and we visit them, and the company is mentioning an idea. And we go to the next company, and and we hear a similar idea. What we do is we go back home, we look in our database and say, did anyone in the past mention that idea already or something similar? Then we look to our structures, to our company lists, and we say, well, this could be interesting for this. And then we call them and say, well, we've got an idea. Are you interested? We get them together in a room, not so big as this, but in a room like this. We provide them with coffee and with buns. And then what we do is we moderate this kind of round table meetings. And what we try to do is find common ground. Is there something we can do in a project? And this is not really science. This is just like every sales organization is doing. But you need to have the tools for it, and you need to do it very frequently. And just, I think, 1 out of 4 ideas we discuss in this kind of round tables is actually making it to a real project. You get the people together, we discuss something, they say, well, we don't reach a point where it really makes a sense to do something together. We head off again. No one is angry, not at all. In fact, even getting people together, discussing projects, go out of the room and say we don't do a project together is very valuable. You know why? Especially when you deal with SMEs, with small and medium-sized companies. For them, most of the time, it's even more important to know what not to do. It's even more essential than to know what to do, because they have very scarce resources. They need to focus their resources on very specific issues. And when they get the idea of what not to do, what not makes any sense at this specific moment, then they have a much better perspective of the future, and they know much more profound where to focus their resources. In short, our business model is we provide this information platform. Most important is this company visits. We do organize a lot of regional qualification and events in order to prompt innovation, but the most important thing is collaboration. Getting actual companies together to work on projects. And what we saw is when you bring companies together in projects, they will collaborate also after the projects end. About 70% of our companies engaged in projects work together after those projects end. Because why? They build up trust. They know each other. They know that I can trust that guy, and they keep on cooperating also in different elements. Second example, pretty much the same story. We have a big firefighting engine factory that makes this kind of firefighting vehicles. They approached us, or well, more or less we approached them, and we made a project where I said, well, I want to give it a try whether I can replace that rear part where the light is there. That was an aluminum part before with a plastic part. And he would say, well, I would like to give it a try. I cannot give a serial contract to anyone, but I would need to have know-how partners that give it a try together with me. And we found a plastic sheet company and also a tool company that said, well, we give it a try for the sake of when we are successful, then we might get a serial contract, and then we might have a start ahead when they will produce this kind of parts. They did it, and the result was that the production, the production of this rear part was 30% more expensive than the aluminum part. But they were able to include some functionality, so they were able to reduce the assembly time from half an hour to 4 minutes of that part. So they, in overall, were 20% cheaper when you would consider total cost of ownership than the part before. And those two companies taking the risk, doing technology development up front, were also afterwards granted some serial contracts. But they didn't have the guarantee before. And that was just a, let's say, risk investment into development and technology know-how and build-up. We have one company that is dealing with those old tires. They are more or less grinding those old car tires. And what they did in the past is half of that stuff was burned in a cement factory. The other half was used for those sporting places. I don't know, Tatan. We call it Tatan places in German. Turf, okay. And this guy, the owner of that recycling company, had the idea, well, it's such a valuable resource. Can't we do something different out of this? And he got together some plastic processing companies, some extrusion companies, research institute. And what they did, they produced a filler, an additive for plastics out of those old rubber tires. And what they were able to provide now materials, really value-added materials for the skiing industry, for atomic, for the shock absorbers in the ski industry. Also here, a very small project actually, just 50,000 euros for this company spent. I think they got like 15,000 euros funding from the regional government for this kind of projects. Half a year context. So, and I have many, many more project ideas, what we did in the last few years. In total, we were able to get almost 400 of this kind of projects on the way in the last 15 years. So between 30 and 80 projects per year of this kind is more or less the output of our 9 clusters and networks. And this is the kind of innovation work we do with this kind of projects. There is a small regional funding, so much for the policy part. There is this regional funding for this kind of projects. It's just 30,000 maximum per cluster partner. It's maximum 30% of personnel costs. So this is too little that you would have projects get together just for the sake of the project. We have just projects that is the lubrication for it, but it's too little money that you derive some artificial projects never intended to be on the market. The good thing is this is very fast. Within 10 days you have an approval or disapproval whether your project is funded or not. That's the essential part. It's not, and when you deal with, and that's also a learning what we made, it's not about the absolute amount of money you get from funding. It's not the percentage, it's the time and speed. When you, as a small and medium-sized company, when you, within a year you need a result, not the approval of a project proposal. That's our learning on that, and that's, so little money is fast, helps 10 times than big prime time money later on. What we also do in Austria is, and this is something that could be also a future collaboration between our automotive cluster and yours, is what we do is we try to use the cloud of our SMEs to attract OEMs. What we did with MAN, they have a truck assembling factory in our region. What we did with MAN was, our automotive cluster, we rented an empty warehouse. We got MAN to dismantle a truck completely for us. That was put into that old warehouse. And our cluster partners were invited to make proposals for getting parts cheaper, lighter, more efficient. Not for this specific truck, but for the next generation. And it took us, and we monitored this over 10 years. I think it was like 30 companies submitted proposals. Out of this 30, about half of them, 13, were invited for further talks and negotiations. And 8 of those 30 submitting proposals actually got serial contracts from MAN in the next generation. Time frame, 10 years. After 10 years of doing this activity with MAN, 8 of them actually got new business. And that's something, a point I want to make at this point is cluster and cluster management, those activities, those innovation activities, they take a long time, but they can be and are successful. It's not about R&D per se. With our project, with our cluster activities, we cannot hire any research staff at the local universities, what of course our professors always want to. They say, well, give me the money and I hire your researcher for 3 years and he will write his thesis and so. That's not the case. We cannot provide, our SMEs cannot do that. Those are the Siemens and BMWs and you name it of the world. They can do this, not our SMEs. What we try to do is to foster our SMEs, to help them with very applied, very practical projects. Not so much in terms of that they will get sales directly tomorrow, but when we increase their competitiveness, they will increase their sales by the day after tomorrow. For us, it was, and this is the point I want to make, the question always is, what is public money? Is public money the coal that is funding the engine? Or is public money the oil that is oiling the engine and the engine needs to run by itself? In our case, at the beginning of our cluster activities, the public money was of definitely the coal. We had substantial financial contributions of the government. At the beginning of the automotive cluster, 95% of our financial means came from the government. We were a top-down funded organization by the government, but over time, and this was also very clear from day one, the private side took over, and now it is that I think the public money is just the oil of the engine. Our main source nowadays, it's the companies. 70% of our funding is from the company side. I mean, we do have a budget of 6.4 million euros. So a cluster in our structure has, as I said, between 3 and 7 persons employed. They have an annual budget between 300 and 1 million euros, depending on size, age, members, whatsoever. And this can just be done through the board and through the companies and through the strong involvement of our specific companies. So after 15 years of experience, what do we see? Well, we have a lot of projects with a lot of companies. So we have more than 1,700 companies that have positive experiences in this kind of projects. As I said, more than 70% of those companies work together after those projects end. And we see that most of those projects wouldn't have happened without the participation of the cluster management. Something would have been done, but usually not together with other ones. And of course, I mean, we see, we have those studies. We have also economists at our university. They do those calculations, and they calculate that cluster partners grow faster than non-cluster partners. Well, I mean, we can say it's a good thing, but there it's really the question of cause. Are the companies successful because they're in the cluster, or are the successful companies more likely to join the cluster? The truth is somewhere in the middle. I found somewhere on my way those 3 golden rules of trust, and I think I really can underwrite it 110% from my experience. Trust needs time. There are just a few low-hanging fruits there, but trust needs time. Sometimes a lot of time. In our case, in the automotive cluster, we have now a project where 3 automotive companies set up a common, they are not competitors, they set up a common factory now in China. This would not have been able 10 years ago, not even 5 years ago. Now, after, I think they've done various projects in the automotive cluster, now they have the trust to do this venture together. And this is really a critical project. If this project is going to fail, they are all having an existential problem. Not nowadays, but in 5 or 10 years' time, because they need to go there. Trust needs touch. Trust in terms of it's a person business, it's a people business, as it was said before. It's about getting people face to face together and for a very long time and very often. That's what we do in our events, seminars, company visits, whatsoever. And trust is tough. Tough in terms of it takes time to build it up, but it's very tough to maintain it. It's just like with reputation. You build up a reputation, you build up trust for 10 years or longer, and it goes like this, then you destroy it. So trust is tough.